Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. My name is John. This is a very special bonus session on this super Tuesday. This is February 22nd, 2022, the date that's made up all of twos. Today, we are going to be working with the archetypes and the elements of Gene Key 55. And as we began just a week ago, we've upgraded our lunar alchemy process to integrate the energies of the elements with the archetypes that correspond to each solar transit. Hey, Bella, welcome.
Hi.
How are you today?
I am activated. I've had two calls.
Oh, you turned off.
The spleen and then the 55 in our group container. So it feels, yeah. And I know we have some extra people today, maybe that are going to come, that were invited. So I'm in the energy, I guess,
Yes.
in the energy of freedom and expansion.
Yeah, so welcome to our special guests for today, and of course to our solar members. We're so happy that you can join us outside of our regular time, which is on Thursdays at this time. So let's go ahead and dive in, Bella. We're talking about the master key, Gene Key 55, and the archetype of the game changer. And while I was considering this particular archetypal energy within the context of Gene Key 55, which for everyone who's ever read this particular Gene Key, it's epic in proportion. I mean, Richard Rudd is not, his language is extraordinarily poetic. And so every Gene Key has a great deal of depth to it that he's able to express in a relatively few number of pages. But the 55 covers the entire range of human history from essentially the beginning of time. And when I'm looking at this archetype of the game changer, that idea, it comes up so many times throughout this context that the 55 paints for us, as well as within each stage of our evolutionary process. As most everyone knows, this Gene Key is the dream of the dragonfly, which lives its life in 3 phases. And each transformation that it goes through, it completely changes the experience 100%. The dragonfly starts as an egg, and then it hatches and becomes this sort of water nymph thing that runs around eating little fishes and insects that live in the water. It doesn't have to breathe air. And then for some mysterious reason at some point, it climbs out of the water and becomes a dragonfly without any of the, it goes through a transition process, but it doesn't have a transformational, like it doesn't go into a cocoon. It doesn't it doesn't go into some hiding period. It just kind of climbs up on a stem and like the dragonfly pops out of its skin. So in every case, we have this incredible transformational aspect. And Bella, what I wanted to ask you about this archetype is, how do you see this game changer archetype as an energy that a personality like me or you or anybody paying attention could try on? And then how does that fit into this field of human experience that is described by victimization, this prevalence of experience that pretty much is the root of every shadow, and arguably is the central aspect of all human experience today in regarding any form of suffering. I mean, such a huge topic. So yeah, I just love to hear your angle and where you approach this.
And my way in is going to be quite simple, and it's about attitude, because that's what I feel like the 55 says. It's a Pisces gate, and it's going to see everything that is like falling apart in the world, but it's not going to cry over the spilled milk, or it's not going to look back and say the solution is in the past. It's the attitude of knowing that the totality of what's going on, we don't really know, because it's beyond what we can comprehend. It's this Pisces energy, it's this beyond energy. And what I feel is that when we take on the costume of the game changer, it is to go to a different place than the go-to that we usually have. Our patterns of reaction or even response are habitual, and it's the same way that we always do it. And what I feel like the game changer is saying, okay, this happened a million times, and now there is the time that I'm going to see it differently, that I'm going to act differently. And it's just a shift of attitude, or a shift of awareness that we see here. And I know that the habitual way of going, it's almost addictive, because we spoke about this in the 49, I think, which is linked to this Jinky. When something happens and you feel like you get so annoyed with that person that does that to you, for example, then it's so easy to go there. Or you turn on the news and you hear them say something that you think it's like so out of all normalcy that it shouldn't be allowed to be said on TV. And what do you do with that? Or I was taking an Uber the other day, and I thought he was speaking to me, but he was speaking really loudly on the phone about how horrible Lyft and Uber are paying him. And somehow he's sitting there driving and choosing to have that attitude. So it's a kind of simple answer to a very big question, but that's where I feel like the shift is starting. And to kind of zoom out a little bit, I believe that even if the human race, if we are eradicated from this planet, it's not because at the end of the day, the body is just the costume of where we are now. Like, even if we have to be eradicated, I think that the time we live in now is the most interesting time and the most fertile time that we've ever lived in. So if you are here now with like 7.8 billion people, there's a reason for you being here. There's a reason for you being able to do those quantum leap in awareness that we are doing. And I hope that we're going to be able to do them embodied, because that's what I'm interested in. But I even recognize that if this experiment, if this reality fails, if this planet fails, maybe let's just be kind of down to earth in how we are speaking. Even if this is failing, it's not a failure. That is how we are. Yeah, I'm even thinking about how we are against so much in this, in right now in this reality. Like I was speaking about that in the first call with Ashley this morning, about antibacterial and anti everything, antivirus. And there's just something where I feel like we've become against life instead of for life. So that I don't know how that connects in, John, exactly, but that feels like the 55 is coming in, and it's saying, are you pro-life? What's your attitude? Or are you against the million thing? Because that's what can decide, your ability to be the game changer or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way, like, I love what you're saying there. And to me, what it makes me think about is considering, where does victimization really start? And where does this attitude really come from? And in all aspects, it's unconscious. The attitude itself of this shadow aspect of what we're experiencing is not something that we've decided upon. It's a biological neural response to the environment. and the threats that are perceived from it. And when that attitude arises without awareness, that attitude of victimization, that things happen outside of us that cause us to feel a particular way, we lose our ability to choose or decide about the way in which we are going to respond, at least to some degree. You know, once that unconscious train gets put in motion, our emotions are just going to have their way with us, because we've already landed in this sort of unconscious victim framework where events occur and then we have uncontrollable responses to those events, at least on an inner level. Maybe we've stepped into a mode of trying, of attempting to evolve our responses, where we're going to have an emotional response, but we're not going to allow ourselves to express it in the world in a particular way. Maybe the way that we're being driven to do it. You know, it feels like the stages of going through this process in a human being is, you know, if you think when you're a very, very small child and you're in a play group or whatever, and some kid takes your toy and won't give it back, and all of these like powerful emotions start like raging through your body, and you just want to like box the kid on the head somehow. And maybe somewhere inside you've already been programmed or conditioned that this is a wrong response. And so you don't. So you're trying to be better in some way. And this, I mean, it feels a little bit like a mystery, but somehow this process of stepping in the way of our natural tendency, maybe what we might call our nature, as this small child to say, hey, give me that back, smack. Once we step in front of that impulse, now we've entered a different pathway that is at the same time, it's like paradoxically against our own nature, because it's not following the impulses that are natural to our system. And it's also perfectly in harmony with our nature, because the energy that is coming through a human being is driving us to evolve. So, I mean, when we consider this happening inside us, Bella, what do you see in that? What is this archetype telling us about this process of maybe natural impulses, of striving and trying? I know I was just looking at which gene key is it, where one of the gene keys where you're absolutely trying to evolve. I think it's the 34 in the shadow aspect, where you're driven to make an effort to become something that you aren't in the moment, right now, right here, to change your unconscious attitude somehow to be better. So how does this archetype play with this field that we're in when we have this possibility for that victimization? Well, maybe possibility is the wrong word. It almost feels like a certainty that until we go through this genetic mutation, every human being is going to be born into this field of victimization and will evolve through it. So how does this archetype play into all of that?
You know, last week we spoke about the fire starter, and we were looking at the trigrams of fire, and you were saying, how can we have a response to some of our desires that are a little bit more healthy? And I remember I was laughing and I was saying, you know, our desires, like we can't tame them. They're there, and it's all about fire. And I have a similar, if you let me share, I have like a similar feeling today. Our desires, can't tame them. They're there, and it's all about fire.
Yeah, let me get that set up for you. Sorry. I was trying to get one of your group didn't make it in, I think.
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Bella.
Okay, yeah, we'll make you, if you are watching and I had promised that you were going to come in on the inside, I will check all my messages before we go into the transmission, before we turn it off. So don't despair, please. Don't go into victimization. Okay, so what I'm feeling, this is the first one I'm going to show, because we still have the fire on the bottom. And now we have thunder on the top. And I think it might even be worse than to have fire over fire, because here you have to deal with the thunder and with the fire. This is the power of this hexagram. This is the power of the game changer. It is using thunder and fire. That is what it catalyzes with. That's what is helping us evolve with. So when we're looking here in the I Ching, it's abundance. Like there is a lot here. And I think the same thing when you read about Richard's prophecy in the 55th gene key, you're like, there's so much, like there is so much richness, and there is a change for sure, but it's not a change from like a zero. It's a change for everything what we have evolved until now, until where we're going. Like there's so much richness, and there is a change for sure. Maybe just mute yourself, Sean. From like a zero. Just mute yourself and then. Where is it?
Sorry.
Yeah, just mute yourself. Okay, so there is an abundance in this gene key, and the name of the hexagram in the I Ching is abundance. And you know, spiritual thunder ignites passionate fire. There's no way of taming this. It's there, and it's part of what we are evolving through. And it's about our attitude. Like, are you going to feel burned by the fire? Are you going to feel scared with the thunder? Thunder is gene key 57 connected to, because it's thunder over thunder. And this is the 30, which is fire over fire. Awareness penetrates deep into the body, rise up and meet the highest frequency. So we have this process of involution into the body, but then it's also evolving. We are evolving with the body. We're not evolving. It's impossible with this 55 to evolve outside the body. It's taking the whole planet with it. That's what it wants. So it's asking us to have the process of involution and the process of evolution. And you know, victimization is the agitation of desire. So of course we can be like, oh my God, feels like this, and I don't want this, and this world is changing too much, and this seems like a bad decision. You know, we are agitating that desire of our longing, and then we're in victimization. But the beautiful thing here is that initiative, that attitude of lightness. Okay, I have no idea what's going to happen, but we are going somewhere. And that is for me the fifth line and the sixth line working together. The fifth line seeing that the old solutions from the world we have been living in don't work anymore. And the sixth line is saying, okay, I'm a role model. I just know that when I tune in cellularly to this moment, something is going to come through me. And it does it. And then other people can follow that example. You know, so there is something here where a new kind of leadership is waking. It's waking up. There is an initiative for a new kind of leadership that is about freedom. That is about it's in the change. So for me, there is, you know, when the king is enlightened, there is no need to fear change. When we are allowing the thunder and the fire and the mutation to work in us, we don't have to be afraid of the change that's coming, because we are going to be prepared. We're going to be the sixth line, even if we don't have any six lines, but I think everybody has at least one sixth line in their profile. We are ready for the change. If we are trying to, like I said in the beginning, work against everything and protect ourselves in a little box that is this big, and like, because we don't trust life, we don't trust bacteria, we don't trust everything that's before have been part of evolution, that's not going to be the abundance. That's not going to be the life. That's not going to be the awakening. I believe that Rather, thunder and fire want to burn down a lot of those limitations and allow us to find a new cellular truth that leads to freedom.
Yeah, I feel like one aspect of that is so challenging for our minds to get. And it's the part where first of all, you have to trust life. But then second of all, you even have to, if you're going to be in harmony with nature, you have to trust the fear that arises and the response of victimization in your experience as an aspect of that nature moving through you. Because our minds want to make it one or the other. Either I'm a victim or I'm a sovereign, and or I have freedom, for instance. Either I'm in prison or I am free. And when we experience the imprisonment, or we experience the victimization, or we experience the fear in any particular moment, the mind's tendency, depending on how your ego is conditioned or structured, is going to react to that feeling and say, I'm not a victim here, but your inner feeling says otherwise. And what really strikes me about this game changer archetype is that it's not just about being free or being a victim. It's about stepping outside of the entire box. It's like this move that is so utterly illogical and unexpected that the prior framework that all of your unconscious energies come through is no longer even relevant, to where, your judgments about victimization, your hopes about the experience of freedom, all of those feelings that arise in you are no longer focused in the same direction. They just kind of like blow up outside of the entire game. And, like when I've been reading reading this particular gene key, some aspects of it, I think about that moment in the Matrix when Neo finally reaches self-realization, if you've seen it, and he suddenly sees the entire world in its digital frequency, and he's then able to manipulate any aspect of it, or at least to relate with it from with total freedom, meaning speed, time, space, nothing has any meaning anymore, except as a playground. Meaning if somebody shoots a bunch of bullets at him, he can just sort of like play and stop them all at once, or dodge them if he feels like it, or do whatever he wants that's fun. He becomes that playful seal that is the mammal aspect of this particular, in the dream arc codex. The seal is the mammal, that playful freedom that they exhibit it's like completely outside of the realm of how we normally think about how do we experience the challenges of life. So I don't know about you, Bella. I'm not really convinced. In fact, I feel like the very idea of even striving for freedom or overcoming victimization attitude is like completely not what this is about.
No, exactly. That's exactly how I feel too. And it's not something that we have discussed, but I think it's something we're arriving to. And that's almost why I would go back to the name of the archetype and saying this is a game changer, and there is something here that's going to happen through thunder and through fire. So even if on the outside you're living in a little village and whatever changes are going on in the world, you're not, it's not really impacting your life. The mutation, the change that's happening in humanity now, on some plane, there is going to be this passionate fire. It's going to be this agitation of a thunder that you don't know where the lightning is going to happen or how it's going to happen, because it's happening in us. I don't think that anybody on this earth now is going to not go through this change. And rather than saying, am I, victimized or am I free? I would say, can you feel into the great change that is happening now? Can you attune yourself to the great change? And what is the attitude that serves you to having this great change, knowing that is something that we haven't experienced as I believe individuals or collective. And what you're mentioning too, and I think in the chat what I'm seeing too, like, yes, this is an individual gate. It's part of the individual circuitry. It has a deep melancholy in it as well. It has an aloneness in it because it's part of that 5539, which is liberation and freedom on the higher in the higher frequency, but it's going to go through periods of hope and despair. And I've seen my own mom, which this is what makes her an emotional projector. She has this, and it's like what's leading her life. It's her inner authority, and it's exhausting. But that's what I'm saying too. There's nothing that she can do that can change her emotional wave. It's not for her about saying, oh, let me jump out of victimization. But there is something where even her, I have much more deep and meaningful conversations with her about what's going on in the world right now than I have with many other people that are much less victimized if we're looking at how she lives her life and her health and all these things. So there is something with this 55 that is beyond, everything is beyond what we have seen before. I think that's what makes it ungraspable. I would say it is about the great change more than anything else. But with the great change, there is something, and maybe it's even prescripted. Maybe we, like I'm feeling since last time here, sitting here and thinking that we can somehow pierce a hole in the shadow is actually arrogance. We can actually just speak to it as we are understanding it. But for sure that in this great change, with the human eye and the human mind, is going to look like some of us are going to be victims and some of us are going to be winners. It's how some of us are going to be free. That's how it looks like. And I know somehow that on an individual level, this is an extremely powerful and difficult key. I have the 39, it's my ascendant, it's my north node. That's the harmonic gate. So I am always pulling in that 55 with other people, with the transits, in order to feel complete. It's going to do this with your spirit and your soul. That's how it feels like. It's going to test your spirit and your soul. That's the way that I feel the agitation and the desire for something different works, until one day, like you're saying, John, one day I feel it's more like we just realize that we're already free. And it can seem like, I usually don't speak like this because I usually feel like very attuned and very respectful with the shadows, and that's the way in. But there's just something in me that I feel happened since the last week where I'm tired of speaking that way, where I feel like we need to be our own ignition.
Yeah. One of the things that I started thinking about was how probably since 2006, 2007, I started a great deal of personal self exploration and training in what it means to be part of the victim consciousness, to engage with other people in discovering the behavioral patterns and the perceptive experiences of what generates that victimization. We called it a triangle because there's other roles that create victims. The hero and the villain also are part of that triangle that victims can't exist without. And so I remember going through this training, and still, even though learning the tools and the methods to avoid acting the part of the victim or the hero or the villain in any particular moment, nothing stopped that triangle from occurring in my experience until I did something completely out of the box. I stopped trying to control the triangle, and I showed up with my full experience, my full willingness to feel the emotions of the situation that I was in. And when I did that, all of a sudden I was like unaffected. Like that triangle couldn't touch me. And I'm not saying that singular experience is one of total transcendence where you just like fly off into the freedom sunset of the Gene Key cities. You know, it's a continual process. But
it's
when
super
that,
important. Like,
yeah,
I just feel like you're saying again, I'm not against victimization. I'm not going after it, trying to like, no, it's like, are you for freedom or are you struggling with the victimization, getting out of it? You can struggle like this forever. And you kind of stop the struggle and suddenly you experience something different.
absolutely. And it's really just, that to me, that's the game changer, is that willingness to, part of our last session on Thursday, the fire, the desire, and the lightness. It's like this no holds barred, engaging in life fully with every aspect of yourself in every moment without holding anything back. That's the game changer to me, is just taking that persona on. And then the game-changing aspect is the willingness to experience all the feelings without trying to change them, without trying to say, I'm not supposed to be a victim, or I'm supposed to be feeling free, or whatever it is. Not that that's even a technique or something to do, but I don't know. It's just how that is hitting me right now in my own pathway of moving through this particular energy. So, Bella, there's so much energetically going on today. The mirrored, the 6 2s of 222 or 22-2, depending on which hemisphere you're in, 2022. There's so much going on today, and the game changer is such a central aspect of what humanity is going through in our process of evolving right now. Before we move on to our quantum elemental transmission, what kind of final thoughts would you have about this archetype, this energy, this moment? Pluto is returning to in conjunction with the United States, where it was at the birth time of the US. There's so many things happening right now. What do you focus on amongst this incredible field of possibilities that's happening?
Yeah, if there was one practical thing, I would say, again, what can you do differently? You can see and feel my energy is different. And it's not that I decided to have a different energy. It's just that I can't be in the energy that I used to be in right now. So there is something that's changing the game here and creating some dynamism that we didn't have before. And then I want to remember that this 55 is called abundance. So instead of working, like I said before, against so many things and trying to like protect yourself from so many things, how can you tune into the abundance of what's there and work with what you have, because we already have, all of us have so much. If you can be on this live stream right now, or if you can be inside the container that we're going to do the transmission, you already have so much to work with what you have, instead of like what you don't have, or instead of why you're victimized. Like I remember, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I remember when I said to somebody, I said for like so many therapies, and I said, I always trust the people that I shouldn't trust. And people owe me at least, I don't even remember, like $500,000 right now. Like that is a lot of money. And that person told me, Bella, you are very lucky. Imagine if you would owe somebody that money and you didn't have it. And that just suddenly it was like, oh my God, like, you know, I had the money to give away, and I still can be here with you today without that money. So if we a little bit change that perspective, instead of lack and victimization, what do you have right now that you can work with? That's what for me feels like the way to tune into this energy.
Yeah. So for those of you who are joining us on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us for the Game Changer and our discussion of it with Gene Key 55. We are now going to switch over to our container to experience an elemental quantum transmission. This is an energy package that is delivered to each of us within the container. And it is a high frequency potential that is a living code that interacts with your own expression of being in this present moment. And what it does is it assists us with integrating all that is potential in this current moment, as well as being able to open to new awareness as it arises. So one last thing that I'll leave you with before we continue, just for contemplation with this particular gene key, is the difference between consciousness and awareness. How does awareness and consciousness function through your own experiences? And what brings awareness to you? What are the things that generate that movement of awareness? And what happens to you and your consciousness when it does? So, to learn more about Lunar Alchemy, I did post a link in the comments on Facebook. You can join us for future discussions and
John, I just want to say one thing. The things that this conversation cannot give us, which is like making sense of everything we're saying and feel like we have a solution out of victimization. For me, what the transmissions are doing, they're going beyond the mind. They're going beyond like where we're stuck in our lives. They go right into like a frequency package. If we want to receive it, if we say yes to it, it goes right into beyond all this and works on that level, on that cellular level. That is, you know, so for me, these conversations are actually shaking up the energy, and sometimes very energetically and sometimes in a more calm way. But then the transmission is what allows us to really work with the energy beyond the mind, especially. So that feels important to say. That's also why they are together, the conversation and then the transmission.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really why these conversations are so important to have, because when we're in contemplation by ourselves, we often can only access those things which we already know. When we have a contrast in front of us, it begins to start that process of bringing up those unconscious parts where we don't have awareness. Once those are loosened in our system, then the energy can work upon them for us to allow for more awareness to manifest. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you back at our regular time on this Thursday, where we'll have a new elemental transmission and discussion for you. So we'll see you then.